Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world.
This episode is brought to you by Founder Catalyst. If you're raising funds and you need to get yourself SCIS and EIS advanced assurance and you need some help with that, then stick around to find out how you can get 5% off of Founder Catalyst's services.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg. My name is Matt Copley. I'm co-founder at HRIZN. We are a generative AI publishing platform that's purpose-built for the automotive industry in our initial sprint. But I'm an avid auto industry executive over the last 25 years. I cut my teeth in the retail side of the car business and made my way into the media world for several years and on to tech-enabled agency, ad tech space. Outside of that, I'm an avid snowboarder and baseball coach, and try to spend a little time on the water in the summertime. But yeah, we're at my core, I've always really just been creative and a bit of an innovator and a curious question asker of what might be possible. So yeah, I think that's sort of who I am. I live outside of Charlotte, on the South Carolina side of the border. Got a 15-year-old son and my wife of almost 18 years. And yeah, man, really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, man, and great introduction. It's been a long time coming. We spoke ages ago initially about this, so I'm glad that it's finally come round.
Yeah, five months ago or something. It was funny. Yeah. It came up on my calendar. I was like, oh, wow, it's March already.
Yeah.
This thing's happening.
Yeah. So, I think we even said that, didn't we, when we booked it? I know it's far away, but it will come quick. And man, has it. This year already is, this will come out a bit later than we're recording it, but this year is already flying by. It's kind of insane, really.
Yeah, almost end of the quarter too, which is kind of a head shaker. But
it is, yeah. Especially for like us, where we're trying to raise investment too. It's like, oh, really? Okay. So now we've got, because we have the tax year end and everything like that over in the UK, where a lot of capital is deployed before that. Yep. So now it's all rushing, and we're like, oh, we're probably going to be too late for that. It's crazy. Where does time go? But no, I really do appreciate you coming on. You mentioned about a random thing, but you mentioned about you do baseball coaching. You didn't mention that before when we spoke. Is that like for your son?
I don't know if I did. Yeah, I've coached my son's travel teams for a few years. Right. A couple other guys. The kids today, stateside are, it's a whole different world now. Right. When I grew up, it was kind of like, ride your bike to the Little League field for practice and, get home before it gets too dark type of deal, maybe get a few reps every week. And now it's, data driven and AI analytics and, kids, I think we played something like 86 games last year, calendar year.
Wow.
So they put them through the paces, and just, but some byproduct of that is the part of the country that we're in, right? Sort of the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Southern California are really the big baseball hotbeds where they can play all year round. So,
right.
It's a joy for me as a kid. It's something I shared with my dad and something I've been blessed to share with my son. But yeah, just like the year so far, the time is fleeting. So I make the attempt to carve off that time to spend with my son before he's too grown up and too cool to hang out with dad.
Well, it's the archetypical sort of father-son picture that you have in your mind. Like even in the UK, when we're not we don't have baseball, exported
Like
over here.
footy
In fact,
and some cricket, yeah.
well, yeah, I guess, but even then, like if you imagine sort of father-son time together, you kind of imagine that a ball being thrown. You know what I mean? It's either a baseball or it's an American football. Even though in the UK we don't do that, we actually kick around a football. But there you go,
a little rugby maybe.
maybe, yeah. Well, that's what I would like. I'd much prefer that than football. I'm more of a rugby guy. You wouldn't guess it looking at me now, but back in the day, it would have made sense. But yeah, it's weird how baseball's never been the one that exported well from the US. I don't know many other countries that have fully embraced it.
Well, I mean, through the Americas, it's huge, and on the other side of the Pacific, it is arguably bigger than it is in the US.
Oh, really?
Like,
okay.
You go into, you can see the YouTube videos of Japan and Korea, and it is absolute madness. The environment and the vibe and the energy in those stadiums is crazy. So it's exported well in certain scenarios, but for sure, like heading across the Atlantic, right? It's very much sort of the a lot of the like old UK and Indian sports like cricket and soccer, football and whatnot have really prevailed. But I think a lot of that's just, you've got 1,000 years of runway behind you that you didn't have with baseball.
There is a cultural thing to do with those games. I've noticed that, in the Europe, we like games that are slow.
Yes.
And take a really long time. Like I personally am not a huge fan of cricket.
A grind. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of like cricket, because it's just like, any game that isn't finished in a day, like don't talk to me about it.
Right.
But in America, it's very fast paced.
Yeah. Like even baseball here is viewed very much as slow.
Really?
Like for, my wife, for instance, right? She thought baseball was absolute brain damage to watch until her own son started playing, and she started to understand the nuances of the game. And there's deeper sort of veins that run in baseball. It's very much sort of the mental battle between pitcher and batter and situational awareness. And in many ways, like I think there are some parallels with like soccer in general, where part of the joy of experiencing the game, once it is the tension between the scores and not just the scores, right? So
and then there's the history side of it too, right? You've got some iconic characters and teams throughout baseball history.
Rooted in the fiber of America.
Some big rivalries, between teams and big upsets. I mean, in that sense, I think baseball is probably closer to being the more cultural equivalent in terms of social impact in the US than, say, American football, if you're comparing it to like football here in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, football definitely American football has its own roots, right? It's just different.
Yeah.
Football is very much like, it's war. It's battling in the trenches for real estate in either direction, right? Very. I mean, it's got its own set of nuance and beauty about it, but it is definitely different. In baseball is just the dynamics are oddly beautiful and somewhat sacred if you are indeed a fan of the game. Right. And I think in many cases, like you have to have played and loved the game or loved someone who loves the game to really appreciate it at the level of like a deep understanding and reverence for it. Right.
I mean, it's the same as anything, isn't it? Until you get stuck into it, you won't fully understand it, Yeah. I mean, this is why, this is why people often tell me, my wife included, that I have ADHD because which I don't care about the labels and stuff, but because I can find that deeper level of appreciation for almost anything if it's just presented to me, and I can get quite into it. And I have to be very careful because if everything fascinates me, everything's interesting, and it's like, don't put it in front of me, otherwise I'm going to get pretty obsessed. You know what I mean? So
squirrel.
Yeah. So fortunately, I've learned to just to nip that in the bud a bit. But anyway, bit of a tangent there about baseball. But I was just interested in that. Especially as a father of two myself, was thinking about, and I'm not a particularly sporty guy, so I'm more in front of my computer. But let's go back a bit. You've said in your introduction a bit about yourself, but I want to know a bit more about that. So you've said you've been in the car biz essentially in one form or another now for quite an enormous amount of time. So how did you get into that initially? What sort of drove you into that?
I walked into a car dealership in my early 20s, 21 years old. I figured, I always had a passion for cars growing up. I didn't grow up with a lot of wealth around me. My parents split when I was young, real young. And, they both worked real hard to get by, and generally like amicable, relationship, but definitely a divided home, and at many times quite a bit of distance between us, right? So, I was a smart kid, but fairly rebellious, and had managed to get myself, maybe off the rails a bit. And, I grew up in a town that was devoid of a lot of sort of middle class industrial opportunity. Very much a tourist town, and pretty strong separation of uber rich and the people who serve them, right? And there was not a lot of industry in the middle of it. I found myself in a place where I had made a clear decision to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I'd been in college and not really found the things that called to me. Computer science was, not as sexy at that point, right? And frankly, the things I did end up carving a career path in hardly existed at that point. And I was thinking about getting my real estate license, of all things. And I was like, okay, well, I got to find something to do while I, go through that process, because there's fairly significant amount of study and training and testing to get through that. I'm like, I love cars. Let's go see if I can sell cars. My first month, I made more money than either of my parents had ever made in a month. And it was like, oh, this is amazing, right? I'm here for this. And so the car business in many ways was like a big blessing to me, right? It sort of found me in an unexpected way, or I found it in an unexpected way, and it immediately sort of rewarded my excitement for it. Carved my path in the automotive business in New Mexico for a couple years. Chance, the universe has ways of just throwing catastrophe at you to galvanize you and point you in different directions. And there was an arson at a condo complex that I was at, and basically everything that I had moved out of my parents' house to sort of, start being a grown-up burned to the ground. My roommate and I walked out of there with the clothes on our backs. And it was a bit of a message to like, okay, it's time to get out of your hometown.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like, and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
And go elsewhere. At that point, I moved into Arizona and really cut my teeth in the car business, learned a lot on the retail side, saw that a lot of the, top earners in the sales side of the business were sort of, falling into this new thing called internet sales, which, in the early 2000s was basically, just responding to online leads. And, worked my way, started getting really curious about that evolving space. I think In the car business, there's some transience to it, especially with the variable operations side of the business. People in the sales orgs often are hopping around opportunity to opportunity. I sought to work myself into the internet side of the business, understand it, and got to a place where I can, there started to be some demand for me to help dealerships, sort of right size their digital departments and figure out this new thing when they realized it wasn't just a passing fad. I had a lot of hands-on experience there with context to rephotographing a 450 car inventory because I wasn't willing to wait for the photo contractor to do them 10 cars at a time over the next X number of weeks, right? So I sort of saw the emergence of Google Ads become a thing. We were early into Google. I think the first Facebook account that I had, we had to sort of join our local network first. So it was an interesting time to grow in the business because I got to see a lot of the emergence of big tech and DigAd and its evolution. In 2009, my son was born, and in the car business, right, it's a pretty heavy grind on the retail side with respect to late nights, weekends, holidays, etc. Those started to have a new value to me. I got recruited across into broadcast media, actually. We were TV advertisers at the time, and the TV stations were trying to understand how to sell digital instead of just give it away as added value with their TV buys. Took a leap of faith there, and quite a bit of a pay cut to jump over into the broadcast space, and over the following years started to sort of climb that corporate ladder. In broadcast television, really the fastest way to sort of grow your career path is to be willing to move markets. I was exploring some opportunities. We had just taken over operations of a TV station in New Orleans, and had another one in Louisville, Kentucky that I was looking at. And my sort of dotted line boss at corporate was like, hey, either of these opportunities would be great, but I've been thinking about propping up an automotive vertical at corporate to help our TV stations bundle media in ways that are impactful for automotive dealers, both broadcast and digital. Is it something that would interest you? And, kudos to my wife. I probably wouldn't have done it because it was sort of, oh God, here comes the car business dragging me back after I've escaped. And she really pushed me. She's like, this is tailor-made for you. You need to go do this. So we packed up the family like Beverly Hillbillies and relocated across the country from Arizona to Charlotte. And it's kind of a head scratcher story of how I carved my path through all of it. But we built a digital team here in Charlotte that grew from myself in a prison cell reminiscent office in a large TV campus here in Charlotte to a big glass-walled office, with I think we probably had 30 or 40 people across, the automotive division. We had a focused automotive division. We had a focused healthcare division. And then the team trafficked all of the digital ad traffic for about 9,000 to 9,500 digital orders a month. So there were probably 30 or 40 people in creative and ad traffic. And we at the time, we were the largest privately held broadcast media company in the country. Wow. We had early stage experience. I think we were one of the first broadcast companies to start releasing remnant inventory into like Media Ocean's buying ecosystem on the programmatic side. So we were early into OTT back in like 2013, 14. It just blessed with so much experience over the years. And then we ended up carving a path in automotive that was pretty, fairly good hockey stick growth at that time. We had, a fairly high margin product. We weren't in the search space. It was a lot of programmatic and O&O display and video advertising. So, we got the attention of our corporate executives, like, oh, there's money to be made here in automotive. Like, what do we really do to get in the game? And at the time, we put together a short list of companies and worked with a banker to sort of analyze those opportunities. And one thing led to another. We ended up buying an ad tech company out of Atlanta, and sort of filled some gaps for us, was very much aligned from a culture perspective, as aligned as an ad tech company could be with legacy media, I should say.
Right.
And we tried and failed to sort of merge those two things into one omni-channel offering. Subsequently, the broadcast company decided to go public or go through somewhat of a reverse merger. They're now one of the top 5 publicly traded broadcast entities in the country. And at that time, I spun off into the ad tech world, right? I stayed with the ad tech company we had bought and sort of wore every hat in the world on that front. We were very much auto focused. Grew that company from a small startup out of South Carolina, Georgia, to the second largest manager of Google funds in tier 3 retail automotive. And it was a good run, right? About an 8-year run.
Nice. And what brought that to an end? Was that your decision? Is that when you came up with the concept, or not yet?
I had thought about it being my decision for 90 days or so before they were kind enough to part ways with me.
Right.
I mean, the writing was on the wall, right? My last couple of years there, I headed up product strategy and supported the product team, the sales team, the marketing teams, and then worked sort of directly with our PE firm on managing an M&A funnel and acquiring companies to fill gaps, right? At that point, we'd gotten up to 2,000 clients or so. And, there's a certain point as a tech-enabled services business where it just becomes hard to innovate, right? When you're providing tech-enabled services to thousands of clients, right? And especially if you're not like full startup mode, burning mountains of cash, not worrying about EBITDA, it's hard to innovate. If you've got a board that's pressing, EBITDA generation for investors, it's like you're trying to manage this balance of two sort of diametrically opposed forces in the business. Becomes hard to innovate, and you're sort of you're going to be able to grow faster by becoming an acquisition and integration company than an innovator. So that's sort of where we were, and we'd sort of come to the end of that road, right? Like the firm was sort of done buying other companies. We'd put the pieces in place, and it was a mutually and professionally agreeable departure, and they absolutely did right by me. And I'm forever grateful for the time that I had there, because without it, I never would have, had the experiences to give me the courage to go do something new. Right.
So what was that moment then that sparked the idea for HRIZN and just wanting to go out and do your own thing? What was this something that had been festering for a while, or was this something that really only came to you once you'd parted ways with?
No,
with
I mean, here, I think consciously or subconsciously, it had been festering in the background, largely through the last couple of years, and having the opportunity to be involved in the diligence process on a number of potential acquisitions and whatnot. When you have an opportunity to sort of crack open the books of a myriad of different companies and see how they operate and their founder stories and where they started and how they got where they are, after 12 years in media and ad tech and a almost 10-year career on the retail side of the automotive business, it's like, okay, if these guys can do this and have successful exits, like, why not me, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
It also
it grounds those stories a bit more, right? It's like
it grounds it, and it also, like, I think there was a level of just fatigue and burnout, having been a part of a real large scale ad agency, tech-enabled ad agency like that, don't get me wrong, we were well compensated. But, I came to a place of, like, if I'm going to pour blood, sweat, tears, 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week sometimes into driving growth for a company, I ought to be doing it for myself, right? And I think it sort of came to the conscious forefront after the departure.
Raising investment is painful enough without getting bogged down in legal costs. That's why I'm using Founder Catalyst, today's sponsor for Peer, my startup's pre-seed raise. We've been lucky enough to have Sam, the CEO of Founder Catalyst, on the show before. Go and check out that episode. Their funding round service offers the most cost-effective way to produce funding round legals in the UK. It's just £1,495 excluding VAT, with no monthly fees or hidden extras, no matter how much you're raising. One Founder Catalyst customer recently raised 2.7 million and saved around £10,000 compared to the next option. If you're looking for SEIS, EIS Advanced Assurance, they've got a 100% success rate over the last 3 years. Founder Catalyst is built by founders for founders, and from my own experience, I can't recommend them enough. You can scan the QR code on the screen around here somewhere or around there somewhere, I don't know, or use the link in the description for 5% off. Thank you to Founder Catalyst for sponsoring this episode. Now back to it.
I had just, sort of the way that the universe works. I was out west on a ski trip before they let me go. And, on the last day, of course, nothing heroic. Buddy of mine, we're both very good skiers, both grew up in ski country. Just stupid, silly stuff, right? We were sitting on the side of a run, deciding on what lift to go to. I start sort of sliding backwards to flip around to go where we're going, and he comes around behind me, takes my left ski out from under me, and I go down like a sniper shot, and big pop in my knee, and I'm like, oh, that was not normal. Well, turns out I tore my MCL. So I'm laid up, right? Sure. After they term me, I'm laid up, hobbling around with a torn MCL. And, when I updated LinkedIn that I was doing some independent consulting and had left Pure Cars, it was, sort of this cascade of opportunity came out of the woodwork. And, I made the conscious decision at that point to just sort of wait and see what the universe put in front of me. And it was interesting. A really good buddy and client of mine, former client of mine that I'd worked with for years. And I think I met him on his 8th day in the car business. He was not a car guy. He was a former agile developer for, Prometheus Global Media, Billboard Magazine, Adweek, those publications, Fox, other players in the publishing space. He sort of slipped and fell into the car business because he bought a pinball machine from a dealer group principal. And we had met 8 years prior, sort of vibed, spoke the same language. We're both very tech-minded, saw opportunity everywhere and where the automotive business could be modernized and efficiency could be driven. And we'd always sort of talked about, always sort of talked about doing cool stuff. One day, right? Like, one day you and I are going to go do cool stuff. And, it was funny. He called me after I updated my LinkedIn, and he's like, he had built this vehicle acquisition platform during COVID. And if you recall, in COVID, there were sort of like rolling shutdowns of car dealerships in the U.S. Then there was like a bull run on vehicles because everybody was working from home now, and people were moving out of metro areas and buying houses in the sticks because they didn't have to go to the office anymore. All of a sudden, there's this huge demand for vehicles, and car dealers at the time were really struggling with that supply demand paradox. The auctions were either grossly overpriced or just thin on inventory. Dealers were struggling to keep their lots full, and there was a real demand for buying direct from the public. And Dave had built a vehicle acquisition platform in the dealer group that he was working in at the time, and they had gotten to a point where they were buying something like 135 cars a month off the street, fully automated end to end. Like, the consumer never had even knew it was part of a dealer group. It was a separate brand. It was marketed as its own thing. And literally a rep with a branded quarter zip would just show up with a check and take the keys to their car. Like, it was really beautifully done.
That's brilliant. Mm.
Anyway, the dealer group that he was with had exited to one of the larger consolidated auto groups here in the U.S. And that tech platform had gone with it, and we both sort of had found ourselves like doing a little consulting and gainfully unemployed. And we were on a call. He was driving back from a client meeting, and he was doing some pretty incredible stuff, sort of centralizing dealerships' data into Looker environments and surfacing a lot of insights around operational efficiency and whatnot. And he's like, listen, I mean, I'm doing cool stuff, but I can't clone Dave, and there's only so many dealers I can handle. Like, we need to build software that automates Matt and Dave. And we're like, no time like the present. So that was sort of the moment, right? Coincidentally, it was sort of the time of AI getting open sourced, and a lot of this new sort of opportunity and AI explosion, and what I knew, having been in the an A space and product development space for a couple of years, was like, hey, if we're not building like AI first at our core, right, like rooting everything in an AI first workflow, we're building for yesterday, and we're going to be irrelevant pretty quickly. Like many founders, right, like we set out to slay some monster dragons at first, and then we got dragged into product market fit by a lot of our dealer advisors. So the product that will be first to market for us is not even the initial dragon that we planned for, but it's resonated with the dealer community in some pretty impactful ways, and the agency community in some pretty impactful ways, and so we're very excited about where we sit today. I think that the aha moment, yeah, I mean, maybe there's one there, right? But I think for most founders, there's a series of aha moments and painful precipices that you've got to go through to really find the product market fit and find the thing that is going to launch you out of the gate successfully, and in a way that puts you in a future cash position that enables you to do the moonshot things that perhaps you set out to do initially.
Yeah, and that sounds like a very familiar story that we're going through with our startup at the moment. Trying to find what that one thing is, especially when you've got those big visions where quite often there can be quite a few routes to go down, even early on, and you've just got to try it out. And that's what we're doing. We're just trying it out, and we're fortunate we've got a little group of us. So we've kind of given everyone something. So right, you go and hang that one out. You go and hang that one out. I'll go and hang this one out. Let's see what happens. That's all you can do. But that bigger vision, that bigger dragon, like you say, that needs to be slayed, that's still there. But we know we can't bite that off right now. We'll
I
get
mean,
to it. It's
unless
one
you want
step
to
at a time.
completely sell your soul, right? And that's another thing that we've battled, right? Could we go pitch at Y Combinator and get some ungodly sum of money to go slay that dragon? Potentially, yes. But would that be the environment that leads us to the most impactful product? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Right. It certainly decreases the chances because you're missing out on all of that learning opportunity and building the business from the
and
ground
for
up.
us, we were very blessed, right? Like, not every founder is blessed with enough savings to stop taking a paycheck for 2 years and work on a project, right? We had both had successful career paths to a point where we put away some money, and I think both of us felt that that there was a really strong likelihood that a bet made on ourselves with our own money would pay off in spades if we were so bold as to stay the course.
How does that sort of conversation go down in terms of the household, though? To say you're
The
going to make that
household?
bet. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it sounds like you've got an incredibly supportive wife. You had mentioned about how before she kind of encouraged you to take that initial role that you were.
Yeah, she is my biggest supporter and my most unrelenting critic all at once, every day. But I'm a better person for that.
Yeah.
It's harrowing, right? And I don't think just for the people, you do as much as you can, especially when you're bootstrapping, to shield the people you love from the emotional firestorm that you go through every day. One of my dear friends and colleagues and mentors, and former founder, actually now a few times over founder, he and I talked, and do talk from time to time. And one of the things he told me early on is, he's like, welcome. He said, only a founder can understand the feeling in the pit of your stomach of all of the emotions all at once, all of the time. And
100%.
It is 100% true. If you can get through it and you're blessed with the resources to navigate that storm, I have found that it does galvanize you tremendously. And 2 years into this, I would not trade it for any potential salary over the last 4 or 5 years, because regardless of where our journey leads us, I will not die with the regret of not having attempted it.
Right. But the highs are high, the lows are lows. That's the trade-off, though, right?
Yeah, I would say that there's a bit of a roller coaster ride every day, and it's a different roller coaster every day. So you are unprepared for the twists and turns, and you just have to learn to navigate and ride it with some general level of emotional indifference. But I don't know. I don't know if it's as much highs. I mean, there are the highs and the lows, but the middle is really all of the emotions all of the time, all at once.
Well, yeah, because there's barely any moments to even take stock
it's
of where you are. Yeah, it's
joy
just
and fear and elation and panic and
all at once. Yeah,
despair and all of it all at once, for sure.
It's like that movie, whatever it's called, like Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Yeah. But I think there's a theme that I found, throughout my course of my career, speaking to founders and doing this show, where it certainly seems to be incredibly helpful to have those in your life, whether it's through mentors or family, partners, whatever, to be just that. Not necessarily fully understand what it is you're doing. That can obviously be helpful, but at the very least, just encourage you. And like you said, be that nice mix, that helpful mix of supporter and critic.
Oh, 1,000. It's spot on. And I will tell you this, like, one of the things, I think some of the advantage that Dave and I have and, our core team, we're older guys, I would say. We're not fresh out of college founders. We've both got a lot of runway behind us with respect to our career experience and industry experience and whatnot. And also coming together, not a ton of ego involved in the founding of the company. But we've also been very straight up about, like, we know a lot of things, but we also know what we don't know. And we know there's a lot that we don't know, right? And I think it's important as a founder, a lot of people think about it as going it alone and trying to do all the things yourself. It's really important to know what you're not good at.
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
And then ask your network for support, right? I think you'd be amazed how many people are willing to give to somebody who's so bold to ask, right? I think, as we've shared our vision with our core team over the last couple of years, right? I'm armed with engineers and UX UI that are so brutally out of my budget range right now. The level of talent that has jumped into this project has been astounding, and largely it's because they're as excited about the vision as we are, right? And so I think a lot of weathering that storm is really being a good communicator of your vision and delivering that with passion, but also being bold enough to share it, right? I think a lot of great ideas die on the vine because a founder is worried that people are going to take off with their idea, right? And that's real. Like we definitely had, I think in every conversation we have, there is a reasonable amount of consideration of the risk involved in a given conversation, but it's more around the people, right? And leveraging the people in your network who are vibing with the project you're working on, and going to the community for help in the areas that you need it, whether it's finance or dev or sales leadership or whatever you might need at a given time, right? Ask, right? I think Steve Jobs, paraphrasing, but he had some interview where he talked a lot about that in his early days, right? Where he just, some of the reasons he succeeded so much was that he was bold enough to call the founder of Sun Microsystems and ask for help.
Right.
And I think a lot of us get caught up in feeling insignificant, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, all the other things that keep us from doing something as simple as picking up a phone or sending an email and asking.
Yeah, there's the downsides are just way overshadowed by the upsides of just sharing and asking. I've talked about this ad nauseum probably now for people who are regular listeners, but this comes up a lot as a topic of people being concerned about sharing their ideas. The fact is, ideas are a dime a dozen, right? There can be 1,000 people that can have exact same idea as you. It doesn't actually matter if someone steals your idea.
Is what's rare.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what it always comes down to, is execution. And it's actually, to further your point about Apple, it's like, as an example, it's those people that are going to put themselves out there as part of that execution and continually, get in front of the right people and ask the right questions and ask for the right help at the right time, that are going to be far more likely to execute and get shit done. That's ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, it's also a bit of taking a page out of the sales playbook too, which is, you don't get a close unless you ask for it sometimes, right? So
100%.
the worst kind of, sales rep is the one that pitches and then just goes, right, let me know what you think.
Yeah.
You know,
Product expert.
Right, exactly. It's like, no.
Product expert that forgets to ask for next steps.
Right, exactly. I mean, and that's exactly the same. I mean, that's why I'm very bullish on this idea of, being an excellent communicator as a founder and having at least a certain level of competency with sales, because I think it is useful far beyond just selling your product, but selling your vision to your team, selling your vision to external forces, and rallying people to just want to help you. Right. So if you do meet some stranger on a train one day and you're just talking about it and it happens that he manages a hedge fund, if you're talking about it with enough passion, conviction, that he's more likely to go, do you know what? Here's my business card. Let's talk, rather than just here's some nutter that thinks he's a founder on a train.
Yeah,
it's a subtle difference, but
100%. There was a podcast that was shared with me years ago that always sort of stuck with me. It was an interview with the founder at Canva, and she sort of, the theme that she really drilled into was this concept of constant onboarding, and it stuck with me, and it's something that I continue to anchor in as I navigate, sort of the founder journey, which is like my role today is director of whatever the hell is on my desk. Right, whatever fire is burning on the desk when I sit down. But she really just drove home this concept of perpetual onboarding that has sort of anchored Canva's growth, and their story is incredible. Obviously, they started as a high school yearbook publisher in the Gold Coast or something, right? Like just totally obscure, and now have knocked Adobe from their throne. And I mean, it's a fantastic, just amazing.
It's a David and Goliath story, isn't it?
It's just incredible.
But when you mean continuous onboarding, do you mean from a product perspective?
So what she talks about is staying true to like a very disciplined pace of perpetually onboarding our prospects, our customers, our employees, our executives, and our investors.
Right. To the idea of a well-defined customer journey that essentially keeps people excited or engaged.
You're always selling.
Yeah.
The product, the roadmap, the journey, and the vision as it evolves, up, down, crossways, etc.
And it's so true. Once you break it down like that, you start seeing that pattern in everything. Whether it's your team, like you say, to take that approach with team members and so on. And people wake up every day. You need to get them excited to go to work. It's that selling happens every day. And what is there? Why they're going to be excited to come to work, and same with customers. What's driving them to go in that product, especially in software sales, because this is the thing that I think a lot of people realize, even who run SaaS companies too. Any form of tech company, is that if it's subscription based, you have to sell it to them every month, which means you have to sell it to them every week, which means you have to sell it to them every day, which means you have to sell it to them every minute they use it. And this is the thing that I think gets lost in the shuffle when people are thinking about sort of churn versus net new deals. They sort of just think of this as a battle that, we just let those things churn and we have to bring in more deals to counter it. So no, there's a root cause of that, and that's probably your product.
It is almost inevitably product if we're talking about pure SaaS, right? Or I think definition of SaaS is evolving a little bit with the AI space, but we can touch on that later, perhaps, or on another conversation. But subscription-based user interface. Let's just, I think the magic, a really brilliant product manager had a product that I worked with years ago and learned a lot from. He sort of branded this phrase that has stuck with me. And I repeat it probably ad nauseum with my my core leadership team, and as we talk about our product and our goals around it. But you have to be relentlessly focused on delivering sparks of joy to your user. And I think about that in the context of, like, this perpetual onboarding as well, right? We've got to be delivering ongoing sparks of joy to our prospects and our users and our core team and our investors, should we get to that point, right? We talked, I don't know, 5 months ago or something, like we've danced around taking on investment money a handful of times over the last few years, and we've been offered some large sums, but we've also, in hindsight, like, it leaves me shaking my head a little bit sometimes, but we have been disciplined almost to a fault with what money we'd be willing to take, right? Not just from an amount, but also from, like, who is the investor and how do they think about the project and the industry that we're in and whatnot. I saw an interesting...
So what value do they add, etc.?
Yeah, I saw an interesting interview. I'm struggling to remember. I think it might have been the founder of Sun. I'd have to go back, but I can send you some of these links I'm referencing if you want them. But he was talking about how, like, 70+% of all investors are unqualified to sit on a board because they've never actually done it themselves, right? And so we're just cautious of that, right? Because it's like, having been a part of, sort of small cap PE and seen some of that world, like, not to knock it, right? Like, I understand what role that capital ecosystem plays in the growth of companies. But, it gets harder and harder to grow the moment that you're having a conversation about growth and EBITDA at the same time, right? Typically, you've got to pick one and go all in on it, right? And I think hindsight would say that competitors we faced in that environment slingshot past us because they were willing to burn mountains of cash and just continue to burn year after year after year after year. But you turn around now and the valuation will probably reflect that was a good bet. So we've been cautious of that. I digress a little bit. We have been cautious of that, not just what money, but who, and have been blessed to be able to remain bootstrapped. And now we've got a strong roster of clients in our closed beta. We've converted 15 plus clients from beta trial feedback to paid over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and we've got 25 or 30 more at some point in the funnel and another 100 behind them. So we're at this interesting point now where it's like, do we actually need to take it now, or could we maybe get ourselves to a seed round or a Series A without having to take investment? But at some point it'll come, right? And we've just tried to be protective of the business and the culture and the vision and the vibe.
Yeah.
While we're small, right? Because this time is the most fun. From a building and growth perspective.
Yeah, it's innovation time, right? So you've got room to play.
Yeah, you're so nimble.
Yeah.
You can do things fast.
Right.
and build cool stuff. And we've just tried to take a ton of joy in that process and make good decisions along the way.
Make the most of it. Absolutely. Yeah, but I did want to ask you a bit more about where things are now, where they're going. You know, you mentioned about the closed beta and the fact that you're now converting and stuff. I do want to ask you a bit more about that, but we've already reached the end of part one. Awesome. That's flown by. So we want to get into that and a bit more about the future and where you're going to go with stuff like that. But we'll come back for we're going to take a short break, but for those listening and watching, you're going to have to come back in a couple of days, I'm afraid. So subscribe, notifications turned on, all of that nonsense, and then you'll find out when part 2 drops with Matt. So in the meantime, that is the end of part 1.
Thank you for listening and or watching. Subscribe with notifications turned on to get notified when part 2 comes out. While you wait, please join in the conversation in the comments below.